This episode of Beauty and the Surgeon podcast is brought to you by Let's Get Checked. Let's Get Checked is an online company dedicated to making professional health testing easy and accessible. Let's Get Checked offers fast, affordable, completely confidential at-home health tests from a range of tests from STDs, male and female hormones, and even COVID-19. Listeners of our podcast who are new to Let's Get Checked get 20% off by using our URL, trylgc.com/beauty, and be sure to use the code BEAUTY20 at checkout. That's trylgc.com, trylgc.com/beauty, BEAUTY, and be sure to use the code BEAUTY20, BEAUTY20 at checkout. Do it. Getting tested is important. It's the responsible thing to do, and you know how important I think it is to make sure you understand your labs. Welcome, everyone, to Beauty and the Surgeon podcast. I'm Amy. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner, and I'm joined today, as always, by Dr. Jason Martin. He's a board-certified plastic and reconstructive surgeon. Dr. Martin, how you doing?
She's an NTP. That's what she is.
I am, nutritional therapy practitioner.
Yeah, it used to be an NTC.
Counselor.
And now we're Ps.
No, C to P.
C to P?
That could sound real bad. We're going to move on from that in a hurry. So, Dr. Martin, how you doing?
I'm working on that mentally right now. Hold on for a second. Okay, I got that.
You got that?
All right, good.
Everybody got that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Doing pretty good. How you doing?
I'm good. It's 2022.
I'm loving this.
Our top 5 came out recently, which I loved so much.
So many good little snippets in there. Mm-hmm. Nils did a mashup, which I loved.
I love the mashup. Yeah, the mashup was really, really good. So this episode today, if you guys would like to, we're just going to jump right in. I feel like that was kind of an abrupt, sorry, I wasn't meaning to be so abrupt transition-y there, but we're going to jump right in to talk about.
Our information's so important, we're just going to go right in.
We're going right in. So,
get ready. Wait, you got to say you can watch it or hear it.
That's what I was about to say.
Oh my God.
You want to say that part?
No, because you do it way better.
Okay. So if you are listening, you'd like to watch the slides that go along with this podcast. There aren't a ton of really super interesting ones with this one, but there's a couple of good ones. And there's actually, you should definitely watch this on our YouTube channel at Jason Martin MD, because there is a special one-of-a-kind piece of art from Dr. Martin in this episode.
It's kind of a hybrid. I was going to draw the whole thing, and then like hour 2, I was like, I'm not drawing the whole thing. So then I lateraled to drawing, and then I was on Adobe Sketch, and then I was on Photoshop, and then back on Adobe Sketch, and that was all over the place. And it's like some chimera hybrid of everything. Well, so it's a mixture. It's a Dr. Martin creation.
It's an original, yes, with maybe some clip art in there.
Do my blue steel look again. Okay.
So a question I commonly get asked as a nutritional therapy practitioner is, people who want to detox, right? It's the beginning of the year. It's 2022. Like, you want to clean up your diet. You binged all from December 15th to January 15th. Here we are, January 15th, and your body's feeling toxic and overloaded.
Like the cheese curds,
all the eggnog.
All the eggnog. We went to a wine tasting, and every course had like some very fatty kind of meat in there.
Well, so you can cut it with the wine.
It was the point. Yeah. And it was excellent. But like by the end of it, you were like sweating oil. Okay. Your triglycerides were like, man, this is a party. This is a party. So yeah, I mean, that's what the holidays are all about. Like fat, sugar, glucose and stuff. And everybody wants to fast.
Well, everybody wants to detox, and that's
detox. Sorry.
Yeah, so people always ask me if they should detox or like do a sugar cleanse or whatever. And if you listen to previous episodes about nutritional therapy, it's not something I recommend. I mean, there are times when people need to cut things out, but drastic, harsh detoxes is not something I recommend. But something I do highly recommend is periods of fasting, and it's something we've never talked about on this podcast before. And I thought it was the perfect time of year to talk about fasting.
I agree.
So let's get into it. So, what is fasting?
It is periods of time where you do not eat. Mm-hmm. You can drink water, but other than that, you're not taking anything in orally.
Yeah. So fasting in the dictionary definition is just abstaining for all or some kinds of food or drink, especially as religious observance. And if you look back in history, I found this awesome thing. So if you search a word on Google, like in Google Dictionary, it will show you the incidence of people like essentially using that word. I loved this. And I know it's kind of hard to see because it's small, but this goes back to 1800. And so that's where it starts, in 1800. And the line is very high. And then it drops way down in like the 1930s, 40s, 50s, but it's having a resurgence. So fasting is up in 2022 having a reoccurrence.
Do you think fasting in the 1800s was due to the fact that a lot of people were starving because they didn't have money for food?
Well, starvation is different than fasting.
Okay, gotcha. So this is a choice.
Correct. So fasting implies that you are doing this by choice, that you are abstaining, not that you are that you have no availability. Mm-hmm. Fasting, though, used to be used much more frequently as a medical intervention. It was prescribed. I mean, going back as far as like Socrates, right, who talked about like, abstaining from food and drink when you're sick. There's something. I sound like an idiot. Something Socrates talked about with food.
There was something like in the Greek times.
Yeah.
And some guy named Socrates.
Socrates. What's it on Bill and Ted?
Yeah.
Socrates.
Socrates.
Yeah. So this has been for really.
Literally, Barb bought the Odyssey.
Oh, the book.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to read that. And I was
Ooh.
like one morning, I'm sitting down and I like went one page. I was like, yeah, I'm going to put that book down and go back to Facebook or whatever I was on.
Google Stream. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's so hard to read now with the way we ingest like stuff, right? And this is a long form podcast, so it's amazing that it's been so well received. But like, it's hard to sit down. You got to put your mind at it, like in that place. So maybe fasting will help with that too. Sorry.
Unfortunately, yes, that is very true. That's a
Yeah.
whole other topic we could dive into.
Right.
But I mean, this just shows that like fasting was actually used because we didn't have a lot of other options, right? There were not other medical interventions. Fasting was used a lot. It was also very religiously, based. I mean, Christians, even Lent is 40 days of giving up something. So that could potentially be fasting from beef, from fasting from sugar. Dr. Martin one year tried to give up chewing gum for Lent, and I almost had to have an intervention.
It wasn't good.
It was very bad. I was like, please give up something else. God will understand.
Yeah.
Anything else. People abstain from alcohol. There's many reasons why people will fast in many different forms, but at its baseline, fasting is just abstaining.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that you're suffering.
I think the common
se.
one in religion is the Eid in Islam.
Ramadan.
Where they do they fast for during this Ramadan time, and then they have Eid is the end result after the fasting. They have this huge meal, and it's very well known. It's done across the world.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's very common. A huge part of this in our country and around the world, fasting is a big part of people's culture in regards to religion.
Yeah. And I will tell you this from doing a fast. I mean, you realize why you might want a higher calling to help you fast, because it does seem like, what am I doing? Like, this is crazy. Like, without food, I'll die. And that's true. Without food, people will die. The amount of time it takes you to die is very dependent on your health status. I mean, there are some people who, if they completely stop eating food, even with water, might only live 7 days because they're at a very fragile health status. Other people, there have been, I think the longest person was like 37 to 40 days.
Yeah, there was something I read that if you remove food and you remove sleep will kill you. Sleep deprivation will kill you before
Yes.
the food restriction.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it just shows how powerful our circadian rhythm is. And in talking about fasting, I'll actually bring that up again further on in this episode. The link between fasting and circadian rhythm is pretty interesting, or between feeding, I guess I should say, and circadian rhythm. Yeah, I'm not going to get ahead of myself. I'm going to not get ahead of myself.
That's my job.
Yeah. So there is something that like you see why religion has such a strong pull with fasting, because that deeper motivation to do this when you're doing something that could potentially end your life if you continued it forever, kind of gives you that purpose to start a fast. So if you don't have that religious purpose, why would any sane person decide to fast from food? And I think let's talk first about the types of fasting in a little bit deeper understanding, that there are many types of like common day fasting that are, not related to a religious belief. Water only.
Right.
Water. You cannot live without water. So without water, a person will die pretty quickly, within a few days.
Within a few days.
Yep.
Yeah.
There are juice fasts. So people who think that they're just going to do a liquid diet or a juice fast for like 5 days.
That's the juice thing, the juice cleanse. Mm-hmm. That's what it seems like a lot of people do.
Yep. Yeah, that to me is punishment. I mean, I think those people are usually doing it to lose weight, or it's more that, yeah.
I think a lot of people listening to this probably have heard of the juice cleanse.
Yeah, or a juice fast.
Yeah.
There's a thought that like you give your digestive system a break, blah, 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 because you're not digesting whatever. So there's juice fasting. The OMAD, which is the 1 meal a day, or the warrior diet, is literally just eating 1 meal a day.
I want that. I feel like I need a warrior diet.
Yeah, I mean, so fasting
What does that mean? You just eat like meat raw?
No, you eat whatever you want, just 1 meal.
Oh.
1 meal a day. That's the warrior diet. Okay. 1 meal a day.
And you can just eat whatever you want.
That's right.
Okay.
The next
we're
morning, though,
talking.
you got to go up and plunder and pillage. And,
Oh, I
you know,
gotcha.
yeah.
Gotcha.
So there's a
Go out and
trade-off.
start turning cars over.
Yeah, you
Like
gotta
yelling
be a
at
gladiator.
dogs.
Yeah, fight a lion. You
Yeah.
know, so if you want to go, you got to get by
Sacrifice
all
a
in.
pigeon. I
Right.
got you.
That's right.
I could do it.
5-2 is actually a really popular one in the medical community. It was popularized specifically.
So you like 5'2" because that's how tall you are.
That's right. Very short.
Very short.
Yep, very short. So 5-2 is 5 days of normal diet, 2 days of either complete fasting, water fasting, or most people do like a 500 calorie a day. And they use this a lot in people who have diabetes or other metabolic conditions. It's actually pretty commonly used. We had a front desk person in Aspen who was actually prescribed this by her doctor when she has familial history of diabetes and her blood sugars were getting kind of high, and he recommended that she do this to try and lose some weight. So she liked it, worked really well for her. Alternate day fasting is just that. You eat one day and you fast the next, and then you eat one day and then you fast the next. Time
What
restrict,
happens on the third day? Do you eat one day and then you fast the next? That's one.
and then you eat one day and then you fast the next.
See, I'm
and
starting
then-
to see a repetition
yeah.
here.
It just goes on and on until you eat 2 days.
I didn't
or you fast
understand what
2
you were saying
days.
at first until you said it 4 times. That's good.
Just enough.
Okay.
So intermittent fasting or time restricted eating, these are kind of the same thing. Intermittent fasting in 2020, I think was the year that there was the data from, was the most popular diet that year of people who were on a diet.
One of the Jimmies does it.
Yep. And intermittent fasting or time restricted eating can really be anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could literally say like, I'm intermittent fasting because I haven't eaten since 8 o'clock last night. Now it's 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to eat. You
Right.
know? Like it can be any time window.
I feel
time
like
restricted.
intermittent fasting is like huge right now. There's so many. It's very common to hear, oh yeah, I don't eat breakfast or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like there's a lot of regimen to it. So what are the breakdown of intermittent?
That's what I mean.
fasting?
There isn't. So
Okay.
like literally you pick your time window and that's when you eat. It's time restricted eating is the exact same thing. So like literally you decide like I'm going to eat for only 8 hours of the day. That's when you eat all of your meals. When that 8 hour time period ends, you don't
Got
eat
it.
again until it starts again. So it can be common ones. The 16-8 is pretty common, especially for men. Some people would even do like a 24, so you have a very short feeding window. So you'd eat between like noon and 4 o'clock or whatever you decide. And that's when you eat all your food. So different than the warrior diet is that you could eat as many meals as you want in that time frame, which if it's 8 hours could be 3 meals, could be 1 meal. But you just cut it at that time. So beginning and end.
Okay.
Yeah. The fasting mimicking diet is actually, or the fasting mimicking protocol is similar, I guess, in some ways to the 5-2 in that you're eating something, but you're eating a very, very low calorie for a little bit longer period of time. So we'll talk more about what that is in a lot of detail toward the end. But my point here is that there's just a lot of different types of fasting. And really, if you haven't eaten for 2 hours, you could technically say I'm fasting.
Right.
So there's no wrong way to fast. Depending on what your goals are, there might be many great ways to fast.
Don't fast shame. Right.
That's right. No fast shaming. You can shame someone fastly.
Yeah.
Quickly. I'm going to quickly shame you. I'm going to fast shame you.
So before we go on to the next slide. So is this a problem? There's so many different types because a lot of people like structure and algorithms and things like that. I think this is a good thing, right? Because people can pick and choose what's good for them.
Well, my point with all of this is it's going to depend on your goals. So the type of fasting you do is going to depend on your goals and, your motivation for starting. That's kind of what I was getting to with like people having that, like, you've got to have some reason why you're doing this because other people might think it's crazy, right? Like, so if you've got to figure out what your motivation is and then find the fasting that works for you.
I have
And
to say that a majority of the people that I talk to about what you and I do, they think we're crazy.
surgery.
No, like our health stuff.
Oh, okay. See,
And
that's why I just don't talk to people.
Right.
You're the
And
only
then-
person I know, and Nils.
And then when I explain to them, this is like, all scientifically studied and this is the value of this. And like, oh, that sounds great, but I just don't get it. And I was like, well, yeah, no, I understand. But it's like, you kind of read about it and learn about it and, ease your way into it. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And that's fine.
And that's why I think intermittent fasting makes sense to people because they don't even understand the benefits of fasting, but they feel like they're doing something if they miss a meal. Is that
Maybe.
being too
I mean,
pejorative?
perhaps. I think dieting culture in general is a suffering culture. So I think anything that people do that makes them feel like they're suffering for what they're getting makes them feel like they're doing something good.
Right.
So if you're hungry, well, this must be good. So I think that's why it is the most popular because it makes people feel like they're suffering for it. But I don't think that's a good thing.
Okay.
I'll just say that. Yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
There we go. We'll leave that there. So let's talk a little bit more about why a person would fast that is not doing it for religious reasons. And I'm going to go to this slide first because this is the slide. This is the Dr. Martin special. So if you came here for the slide, this is the time.
Oh yeah.
This is the slide this is the Dr. Martin original here. And it is actually
The funny thing about this slide, if we gave this to Sarah, she could make it look 12 times better.
Oh, I don't know. I love this. I even love the little dots in the cytoplasm
Yeah.
and like.
See, a lot of that stuff I drew and some of it I input into it. So it's just really interesting. Like the nucleus in the Golgi apparatus.
The Golgi apparatus is this guy.
So-
The nucleus is very shiny in this picture.
My son is just had his biology final, and it's biology level 1 for freshmen in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like half the test was on cell anatomy. He's like, Dad, do you know anything about cell anatomy? I was like, yeah, I know a lot, man. I was a biology major. And he goes, no, you don't. And I was like, well, let's talk about the rough and smooth endoplastic reticulum. And I just kind of did that stare, and he goes, no way. You know that? And so he just started asking me questions. It was fun. I studied with him.
I love that. The one thing that you didn't put on your everlasting gobstopper of a cell here is the phospholipid bilayer.
That was hard to draw because that's
I
very
know.
thin. Yeah. And I could have done another layer over to the left side showing the little bilayer there.
Which is just my favorite part of a
Oh
cell.
my God, that's all you
because
talk about.
phospholipid
It doesn't matter
bilayer.
what we're doing. It doesn't even matter the topics. Amy throws in phospholipid bilayer at some point.
Yep, always.
And I was just like, just don't pay attention to her. Like, just don't listen. It's okay. Just nod.
Yep.
Yep.
But really, when you look at this picture and you think to yourself, like, this is happening in my body all the time. There are all of these. How many cells, Nils, do you think are in the human body?
Oh gosh.
Oh, really? You hit me with that?
Mhm.
2 trillion.
Okay, Dr. Martin?
Yeah. Damn. I'll just say 1 trillion.
So it's estimated that there are roughly 37.2 trillion cells in the human body. And some estimates have gone up as high as 100, depending on, some factors. But a minimum amount is between 30 and 40 trillion cells, individual cells.
That's insane.
Yeah. And when you think about that, it really becomes mind-boggling because what's going on inside every single cell
Right. And that now you can understand cancer. I wish you wouldn't have told me that.
it's so complex.
Right. Because I in my mind, I had 10 cells in there. That's all I got to do is manage
Right.
those 10.
Those 10.
It's like 10 sheep.
Yeah.
Make sure they're groomed. Make sure everything's okay. It's got this 10.
Got this 10.
They got to graze a little bit.
Yep.
Now you're talking about 32 trillion sheep. Mm-hmm. Not going to happen, Amy.
Yeah. So it always amazes me though when you look at this, and I was so excited to see that you drew such a beautiful picture of the inside of a cell because there's so many working parts and so many things that are going on, but a lot can go kind of awry in a cell, but it's its own little cell, right? So it doesn't know what to do really unless it's getting signaling from outside the body or from inside the body. So there's a lot of little, connectors. We've all learned a lot about, viruses and how they get into cells in the last 2 years, knowledge we all wish we probably didn't know. But there's a lot of things going on all the time that are attacking the cell or sending messages to the cell. The cell needs to have nutrients. The cell needs oxygen. Like the cell needs stuff, right? That's why the phospholipid bilayer is so awesome.
Right.
Because they're all the little keys that let stuff in. So when you think about that and you think about how much it takes to just keep those 37 trillion cells going on a daily basis, when we talk about autophagy, we basically mean cell eating. So the cell.
Yeah, what is autophagy?
This is my picture here. So
Good.
autophagy means, so it's 2 words, autophagy. It's basically self-eating. So self-eating. So if the cell is going to destroy itself, eat up all its parts, and then rebuild with a new cell. The picture here kind of shows the process of what starts it, right? You have AMPK, mTOR.
We've
all of
talked
these,
about that before. We have a whole episode on that.
yeah, these processes that basically will go out to the cell and be like, hey, you're broken or you're full of toxic stuff. Like you got to die. And that's the cell has enzymes within itself that make it destroy its phospholipid bilayer, and all of the junk inside the cell is now released. Now, on the surface level, that might seem like a bad idea, right? All this junk is now getting out into your system. And that could be bad, but it actually isn't. It's amazing. I mean, it has to happen, but the things that happen once all that stuff gets out there, that's how your body understands viruses, because all the little parts, right? The cell is blown up. It takes all of them through the lymphatic system into the immune system to be like basically scanned by your white blood cells, which is why when you fast, your white blood cell count goes up because it's working really hard to like deal with all of this waste and make sure that it knows, okay, this was junk. Like the cell didn't need this. It kicked it out. Is this bad? Do we fight this? Do we kill this? Like, let's remember this. This is not good. So it helps your body learn what's good and bad. It also helps the cell get rid of the stuff that's slowing it down, the glycated end products that are making its cell walls sticky. It gives it a chance to kick all that stuff out. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense.
Okay. It gets deep, but like when I say the subtle magic of autophagy, like I really do mean that because it seems like such a simple thing. Like, okay,
It's like
the cell's going to die.
It's like you have that closet that's full of crap.
Yeah.
And that spring day, you're like, damn it, it's a Saturday. I just might as well do it. And once you start, you can't stop. And then like 4 hours later, you have like the best closet ever.
Yeah, because you only kept the good stuff.
That's autophagy.
Yeah. But it rebuilds. So like then the cell, like then here comes awesome stuff. There's like fatty acids floating around and they all like join together in this cool little
You have to watch this on YouTube.
phospholipid layer. And then they like catch all these things. They catch some like mitochondria and like here come into me. And then they build a little bubble around it.
Dude, you're full on Bill Nye right now.
Yes.
This is awesome.
I mean, and then like, look what they do.
Yeah.
Like they do it all over again.
1 trillion times.
And
Like every second.
so,
probably.
okay, here's another fun, anatomy question. So ATP is what we need for energy.
Oh yeah, ATP, I told my son, is the currency of energy. It's like gasoline. It's made in the mitochondria. Everybody knows the mitochondria, right?
They're right there. There's little kidney bean looking things.
So the idea, some of these supplements that people take for longevity and all that kind of stuff, is that you want to maximize ATP production. And part of that is the NAD,
NAD plus,
yeah,
NADH.
exactly. And that's how you get the kind of protons or the positive charge in there for the whole reaction to make ATP. And it's interesting that such a small part of a very small cell could be so important. And then on top of that, looking at the mitochondrial DNA, and that's what they use to trace back the origins of humankind back to Africa and the mitochondrial Eve, which was like in the African sub-Sahara apparently. So it's just so amazing that this all comes from the small, teeny tiny cell.
Yeah.
And that's why we're alive.
Yeah.
I'm really getting freaked out right now.
Well, it is kind of mind-boggling. So ATP is necessary. If you have no ATP, you will die. So you need ATP to be alive. How many times a day do you think your body completely replenishes all of its ATP?
Okay. The entire body?
Yep. And how many times a day?
So it's either like a smaller number or like an amazingly large number.
It's in between.
100 times.
A little more than that, Nils.
I guess I'll go 300 times.
Okay, a little more than that. So it's 1,000 to 1,500 times a day.
That's crazy.
And that's just a normal person. We're not even talking about like an endurance athlete or somebody who's extending extreme amounts of ATP. I mean, think of a sprinter, or someone who is like giving it their all in something. Like you are burning through a lot of ATP, and your body is that smart and can that quickly ramp up production of ATP. And that's how you have energy in life.
It's amazing.
I know. So I could totally geek out even more on autophagy, which I probably will at some point. But for the moment, let's just know that the reason to fast outside of a religious reason, in my mind, is for the benefits it brings through autophagy. So autophagy happens when you're in a fasted state pretty much only because you're only really as a human building or breaking things down. Now, that's not true. You're doing all of them at the same time. Right now, we're all aging, but our cells are still renewing. Yes?
No, I was thinking, I don't know why I'm so philosophical right now. I'm trying to balance out your geekiness. So the Robert Frost, one road diverged in Yellowwood, or two roads diverged in yellow. I took the path less traveled by. You think about it, you're always taking this right or left path in your cells. You're either building or tearing down and building again. And so the idea in longevity and health, and when they talk about these things about health and autophagy, is that to restrict yourself, you get into that breakdown and build again. If you're not restricted and you have a lot of materials there, proteins and fats and stuff, you're going to start building, right? Building muscle, adding fat, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you're also potentially not very efficient. And we're assaulting our bodies with a lot of things all the time.
Yeah. So why is building bad?
Building can be bad. You brought up cancer.
Right.
Cancer is probably the number one reason. Cancer cells are actually different than other cells in the body in that they can produce their own energy aerobically. They don't need oxygen to do it, whereas all other cells in the body need oxygen to kind of create the necessary functions to keep them alive. Cancer cells can ferment glucose to create their own energy, which is pretty scary, right? Like that's not good. So an overgrowth of cells or an overgrowth of bad cells is cancer. Too much fat is not good. It's unhealthy for the body. Too much storage, that's not good. If you have an over proliferation of like pigmented lesions on the surface of the skin, those can get weird in a hurry. Too much photo damage destroys the cell's ability to function normally. So those are definitely times where it's not good.
Yeah, I think that it's such a conundrum. I think about this stuff a lot. Like you want to build, especially as you get older. We've talked about sarcopenia and loss of muscle. Everyone's seen that like 67-year-old person that looks older than they should, and they're like frail, and maybe they don't have good posture. I'm standing up straight now. They don't have good posture, and they don't have good muscle mass and body contour. Like that is a problem with age. But that's antithetic to everything we're talking about right now.
No, it actually isn't.
Listen to me. So if you're talking about on a cellular level, right, we're talking about the difference of activating mTOR or going these other pathways in starvation. That's the difference. That's the divergent road, right? Two roads diverged in yellow wood. I took the one, less traveled by. So you have an option. You can either go to building or not. Now, what Amy's saying, and that's where it starts to make sense, all these things are happening all the time. Mm-hmm. Even in starvation, you're still going to be building. You're to use some resources to build.
Yeah, your skin cells are still fluffing off. Your hair is still growing to some extent or falling out. Your body is still doing things until the day you die.
Right, and so that's where if it's happening, all the time, both things, then that's why every now and then, like focusing in on fasting makes sense, right? Because you want to amplify that process, right? And then you can go back to building again, right?
Well, it gives your body a chance to clean up. And
yeah.
You're going to build better quality with those things too. It gives your
Maybe
body.
That's a better way to put it. You had a party. It's okay to have parties, but then afterwards you got to clean up, and then maybe you have a party again, then you clean up again.
Right. And if you were a fraternity who never cleaned up after parties, pretty soon your house is just full of trash.
Exactly the fraternity that I lived in.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good way to describe it. Like if you just keep partying.
We hired, I was only there for a year, but we hired the fraternity members to clean.
Yeah.
And they absolutely refused, and they still got paid. It was terrible.
Well, then they should not have gotten paid.
No.
But that, if you think about it that way, building is necessary and it's happening all the time. You don't want your skin to stop building. You don't want your hair to stop growing. Those are negative things. So if you don't give your cells the necessary things they need to build, or if your cells are just full of junk, or if your phospholipid bilayer is completely sticky from feeding it bad sugars and denatured oils, you're not really building much that's good.
Yeah.
Like you can be eating in excess and not be building anything good with all that excess.
So what is it about seed oils that people don't understand why they're not that great?
Industrial seed oils are literally poison.
Okay. Let's take it down from one step from there.
That's the thing I'm probably the most passionate about.
Speak to normal people right now. So
they're rancid.
Okay.
They're denatured. They are in a form that your body doesn't understand.
Right.
Canola oil was actually used to fuel lamps. That is rapeseed oil. That is a toxic substance. It's not real. Comes from the rapeseed plant. Cottonseed oil, again, not meant for human consumption. If you can't eat it in its natural form and digest it, you probably shouldn't be eating it in a purified, liquefied form.
What about corn oil?
Also not good.
But you can eat it in its natural form.
You can eat corn in its natural form, but you're not going to be able to get the oil from a large bushel of corn by squeezing it in your hands.
Gotcha.
So
that's why
same
olive
thing with soybean oil.
Yeah, olive oil, right? You could squeeze olives and get oil out.
You can, and the fat content of olives is as high as the fat content of olive oil.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you're changing things really drastically when you're trying to get oil out of like vegetables that are not typically high in oil, right? What is vegetable oil? What's even in that? Corn, soybean, cottonseed, like they can put anything in there. You see that vegetable oil bottle on the shelf and just
I had the same feeling about vegetable juice.
Picture the skull and crossbones on that vegetable oil. And the canola oil. You don't want it in your life. Avocado oil is a great example of a natural oil. Nuts, foods that are naturally high in oils and fat are okay oils to eat. But even those, if they've been processed or ultra refined, or if they've been sitting on your shelf for a year, are probably not safe to eat because they're rancid. So why would you want to put rancid oil in your body to build this beautiful, perfect phospholipid bilayer that is fat, phospholipid? It is 2 layers of fat. So you want to make sure that phospholipid bilayer is as healthy as it can possibly be. And if you're throwing industrial seed oil at it that should be burning a lamp, that's not going to be a healthy cell.
Not good.
No.
So I finally got my family to start using avocado oil.
There you go.
Yeah, it took me a year.
Or
they would hide the canola oil from me, and I would. They don't listen.
You put in their old timey lamps and light them at night.
Yeah, they won't listen to me. So then I just shame them with like Amy comments. Like if Amy saw you eating this, Amy would be very upset.
It would like hurt my soul.
Yeah, and then like Avery one time said to me, she's like, "Don't tell Amy. Don't tell Amy." I was like, "I'm going to tell Amy."
No, you don't need them. There are absolutely better tasting
I think avocado oil is great to cook with.
ghee, butter, olive oil, depending on your application.
Right. I love olive oil.
Yes, there's amazing oil sources out there that are healthful and healthy, and you don't need canola oil or vegetable oil. Like literally, no.
Okay.
No. Okay.
Moving on.
So I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner. If you haven't noticed, I feel passionately about industrial seed oils. Let's take a quick break, and then we're going to dive back into fasting, and I promise I'll stop harping on industrial seed oils. No, I won't ever.
No, she won't.
Let's get checked. Dr. Martin, I'm super excited to talk about our sponsor for this podcast, Let's Get Checked. If you've been a listener of our podcast, you know that we have never had a sponsor before, and that's because we're an educational podcast. We're not looking to monetize, and we also would never recommend something that we didn't believe in and or use ourselves.
So basically you're saying we're very choosy.
We're very choosy when we come to our testing, but Let's Get Checked really aligns with our values. We talk a lot about monitoring your blood values of certain things. We talked recently about vitamin D serum levels. We talk a lot about hormone levels, and it's hard for some people to get to a lab, or you're afraid of the blood draw, or just, you're concerned about confidentiality. Like you have a lot of concerns and you just don't do it. Let's Get Checked makes it super easy because it's completely confidential. You do it from your home. So there's really no excuse not to do it.
Yeah, and we did it recently. Both Amy and I did it. She looked at her women's health, basically her hormone levels, and I looked at mine on the men's health side with testosterone. It was very simple. You go online. Their online interface is really easy to use and good. We got the testing kit very quickly. And the test itself, actually doing the stick, you do a stick on the end of your finger, is not hard to do. It only took about 3 to 4 minutes. You put it back in a sealed envelope that's confidential, goes back to them. You get your results in 2 to 5 days. It's really that simple. And the best part is it's about empowerment, about you taking control and trying to do things that are positive for your health and life. And this is one way to do it, literally from the comfort of your own home.
Yeah, so they offer a wide range of tests. So they do men's and women's hormone panels. They do a full panel of STD testing. They also are now offering a COVID-19 test at home. So there are a lot of other just basic blood levels that you can get tested as well. And one of the things that we always say is you can't track what you don't check. So you might not know what's normal for you in the future if you're not checking it now, especially as it relates to hormones. And men's health specifically, I feel like is a little bit undertreated. I mean, sperm counts are dropping by a large percentage in men these days. Most men struggle at some point in their lifetime with low testosterone.
And those men do not know what the symptoms of low testosterone are. Depression, anxiety, sleep problems, osteopenia or loss of bone, loss of muscle, and something we treat all the time, gynecomastia or male breast growth. These are real problems that can be improved or treated with testosterone. And these men do not know their levels. It's so easy to get checked. And this is why we're so excited about the sponsor.
Yeah. And Let's Get Checked is a completely CLIA certified lab, the CLIA lab. So they're a well-established, completely safe lab to use. You do get contacted after, so you get your results. I got a text at 4:30 in the morning, which I loved, that my results were ready.
And we're both up at 4:30,
yep,
so that was good.
Super excited. And you have access to not only a nurse, but also a physician. So a physician does review your results, and it gives you a little breakdown of like where you're sitting on those levels. Dr. Martin's had even comparisons of like where 2 of the levels should be in relation to each other, which is a really important thing to note.
Right.
Just being within the normal range is not always enough. So it really gave more information than that. You'd still want to, of course, reach out to your own doctor if you needed some additional assistance with these labs or you did see something that was concerning. We didn't, thankfully, so that was good.
Yeah. We were both good. This podcast is about empowerment. It's educational. In my private practice, I'm a board certified plastic surgeon. We are all about empowerment, and this is one way to do it. So we're very excited about the sponsorship, and we're looking forward to using it for our patients moving forward.
Yeah. So as a listener of our podcast, if you're also a new time user to Let's Get Checked, which a lot of you probably are, we do have a 20% discount code. So you do need to go to our specific URL, and it is linked in the description box below, but it's going to be TryLGC. So TRYLGC, like Let's Get Checked.com/beauty, BEAUTY. And you'll need to use the code BEAUTY20 at checkout. Beauty again is BEAUTY 220. And you can pick a test, like any test you'd like, put in our code and get your test shipped to you. Getting tested is the right thing to do. It's lets you know where you're at and what's responsible.
All right. Well, let's get tested.
Let's get tested. Let's get checked.
Let's get checked.
And we're back. I try and keep my feelings to myself. All right. So let's keep talking about fasting.
There are some, like with Amy, you just don't know words you don't use. And like anything that has to do with oil, you just don't even talk about oil. Even if it's about cars, anything with oil. You just do not say the word oil to her. Because you'll get a 12-minute conversation about the rancid canola oil.
Industrial seed oils.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So let's get back to talking about fasting. So what are the benefits of fasting specifically for longevity? There are a lot of benefits of fasting, but the things that specifically I was kind of looking at when I was thinking about fasting is more the things about longevity. We're a health and wellness podcast. None of us are getting any younger, unfortunately. So what are the benefits of fasting? Let's start with the brain. So it increases network plasticity. What does that mean? Basically means that it gives your brain a chance to increase the plasticity or the ability to learn. Plasticity is learning in the brain. So it gives you basically a clean, fresh start with some of those neurons and synapses to kind of start firing again and have you learn better.
Yeah, new pathways, more efficient pathways.
Yeah.
So
when you're fasting for over 24 hours, really for most people over 36 hours, your body switches from using glucose or sugar, carbohydrates as a source of energy, to using ketones. Your brain really likes ketones. Like those ketones, it functions very well on those. It's a really fast burning
that
fuel
must be
for the
from
brain.
evolution.
It is. Well, because you need it, right?
Right.
You have to be able to function when you're fasting, when you have periods of no food.
Well, you think about people that better utilized a long time ago, humans, ketones, and obviously they were all going through states of starvation. And when you get really into starvation, you become ketotic, it would be the person who could better utilize those ketones would survive because they would keep clarity in their brain.
Yep.
And they would go out and ultimately find a food source. So obviously, they were preferred when it comes to evolution.
Absolutely. Like the people who would still be able to be sharp after like 3 days of not having a kill or whatever. Yeah, like those are the people that are going to live. Yes. So that's...
You think you'd be that guy?
I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. I think we should try and see how.
Well, I can tell you about my recent experience here at the end.
Okay.
For the heart, it increases the parasympathetic tone, decreases heart rate,
Good.
decreases blood pressure,
Good.
and increases HRV or heart rate variability. And I will tell you this from personal experience. You can tell that you are in a fasted state because you will see all of those things.
The HRV goes up or down?
Up.
Oh, nice.
Heart rate and blood pressure go down.
I need that.
Yep. And they don't go down to like dangerous levels. If your blood pressure is normal when you start a fast, your blood pressure will still stay within a normal range, but it may lower slightly. It's not like you're going to suddenly you can, if you're not paying attention, you can get super low blood pressure when you're fasting, and that's not safe. But for most people who are healthy, who have normal blood pressure, your blood pressure is going to stay normal. It's just going to be lower, right? And why would that be? Because your body knows like, hey, we need to conserve.
Right.
Like, because we might have to all of a sudden chase after an animal, we better just stay chill until then. So it gives everything a chance to kind of chill out a little bit, which is good. For the fat, we've talked about fat. Fat is an organ. Fat is an organ system in the body. Lipolysis goes up, so you're burning more fat when you're in a fast. ATP production goes up. So again, that's going to trigger you to burn more fat. Autophagy comes on. And I put autophagy under the fat because this is like our cells are very active. Like autophagy is breaking down these fat cells. mTOR is suppressed, and stress resistance goes up. And again, that's evolutionary.
Right.
You have to be able to be resilient or else you're going to die.
Yeah, we've talked about all this stuff before, like hormesis or hermesis, whatever the word is, where you stress cells and it makes them stronger. I mean, this is all points to this. There's these pathways, especially in eukaryotes, these sirtuin pathways. What's the medication or the supplements I take? Those.
Oh, this starts with a P.
Yeah, fisetin and stuff like that, which are supposedly stimulate these sirtuin pathways.
Well, quercetin does this. The other one, it's like resveratrol, but not.
Yeah.
It's different than
Anyways,
that. Yeah.
So it's so interesting, and you're doing this through just a choice in eating or method in eating.
Well, I mean, a food is chemicals, right?
Yeah.
It's all just broken down. So you think about all those signals you're sending your body by eating, by turning all of those off, it gives it a chance to kind of do some other stuff. For your muscles, your insulin sensitivity goes up. So if you are insulin resistant, that can help reverse that because you become more sensitive to insulin when it's got no glucose. Body temperature also goes down in most people. However, A good way to know that you're in an extended fast, that you're really, really in that fat burning, like your body's really burning through its fat stores, is actually your body temperature might slightly increase because it's thermogenic, right? The fat has a lot of energy to it. So when you're burning off the fat, it can increase your body temperature. But overall, again, for healthy, normal weight people, your body temperature will likely lower slightly because your body's trying to conserve. Energy uptake in your gastrointestinal tract is going to go down, right? Because there's less, which is actually a really good thing that your cell proliferation also decreases. The lining of the gut, the intestines, those cells turn over about once every 3 days, which is really fast, right? That's very quickly for
Like
cells
skin,
to turn over. Yeah. So giving your GI tract or your gut a break from that is actually really good. If you have issues with digestion or leaky gut, it gives those things a chance to actually, those bonds to seal, everything to kind of get back to normal, which is really important. Throwing food at your system all the time, it gives your intestines no chance to like rebuild itself, really. It's rebuilding all the time, but not like in a good way. And then in the liver, glyconeogenesis and the decreasing IGF-1. So IGF-1...
You said genesis, you mean lysis.
Lysis, sorry. Other way.
Got you.
Other way, yep.
Martin, thank you.
Thank you. I can't read my own writing.
That's okay. I'm actually paying attention for once.
Yeah.
Because I'm interested.
So what does that mean? So basically your liver does not have glucose coming at it. So it's going to have to start creating some to help.
I mean, liver's a big area for glucose storage, right? So,
yeah. And that's
and production, glucose production too. So
it doesn't have to though if you're constantly throwing sugar at it.
So fatty liver, people have heard of fatty liver problems. That's like a common thing that people have heard of, and alcoholics get it, people that are unhealthy. And you have a lot of fat, and that's because you store, this glycogen and fat and glucose. Like all this stuff is stored in your liver. It's one of the storage areas. So, it would make sense. I mean, I'm sure someone with a fatty liver would probably benefit from a fast. I bet you.
Absolutely, because your liver's having to break down what it's stored.
Yeah.
Also, at that same time, it's going to break down some of those fat cells, hopefully, that are in there because they also have, stored energy in them, essentially. And then it's going to decrease IGF-1, which is insulin-like growth factor, which is one of the primary markers of longevity and healthy longevity. If you have very elevated IGF-1, your health markers are probably not very good, because that should not be super elevated. So those are some of the benefits related specifically to longevity. So we've talked about the benefits of fasting, and now everybody is like, okay, I don't need to have Lent to have a reason to fast because it sounds awesome and I love autophagy and I need to get all the glycated end products off of my cell walls.
That phospholipid bilayer is really concerning me.
It's all gummed up with ages. So who should not fast? This is a pretty important thing. Like fasting is not for everybody. Specifically those under 18 or over 70, you should not fast. And I would go so far as to say I wouldn't recommend fasting, unsupervised fasting, like long duration fasting of more than probably 18 hours for anyone under like 21. Just because you want to make sure that you don't want to stop development. I mean, I feel like I was still getting taller when I was 18, and I still like having like breast development and other things that were still happening, like puberty related things when I was.
You think Skilo felt that way?
When he wished he was a little bit taller?
Yeah.
Maybe if he just stopped fasting.
Maybe stop fasting. Skilo.
So I would make sure, I guess my under 18 there is really more like, I'd want to make sure that somebody was really through puberty. I mean, maybe for a man, not even until they were like 25, unless there were like severe metabolic disorders or obesity or something else you were trying to address. So just take that with caution. Over 70, again, you're in a time frame of your life where you don't have a lot to lose. You want to make sure that you're giving your body everything it needs on a daily basis. Medically monitored fasting is probably totally fine. Or if you've been fasting for your entire life, you're probably fine to continue, but maybe don't start your first fast when you're 75 without talking to your doctor first. Underweight, and that I would mean a BMI under 18, pregnant or breastfeeding. Again, these are not times when you should be
never
taking anything away from your body. Active infection or at risk for recurrent infection, because even though I did say that you get an immune system, or an increase in white blood cells when you are fasting, you are also really restricting a lot of other processes, as we saw. So if you're just recovering from something and you start to fast, you might have a tough time recovering because you're depleting everything. Known or suspected eating disorder. No one should be on a restricted diet who has an eating disorder. And if you're on if you have medication-dependent conditions,
Specifically, and one of them, the big one would be diabetes.
insulin,
Yeah.
yep, or even metformin, anything that lowers your blood glucose, because fasting is going to lower your blood glucose. And then if you are
Taking a medication at the same time
Could be
get into a crisis situation.
really bad,
Yeah.
So definitely talk to your doctor before you start a long duration fast.
You
Because
shouldn't fast before surgery either. by the
no,
way.
absolutely not. And I think that's with infection, surgery, any of those things where your body's trying to heal from something. Even recent vaccination, not a great time to fast.
Right.
That's not a good time to fast. And definitely not around surgery. Anytime when your body needs to rebuild, like heal a scar, you should definitely be giving it. Listen to our podcast episode about nutrition around surgery and know that your body needs a lot to recover from surgery. Yeah. So with all that said, let's talk about my recent experience fasting.
Okay, so this is, before we do this, fasting, we've decided, is positive. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay, good. The type of fast you do is really dependent on what you feel is good for you and maybe what you figure out with your clinician or physician.
It's really more about your goals.
Okay, your goals. We definitely know for sure that fasting stimulates autophagy, which is when Nils goes to his production closet and has all his crap in there, builds up over half the year, and then he cleans it out. And then he feels more organized. He's more efficient with his production company, et
He
cetera.
threw
et cetera.
away all of his VHS tapes.
Yeah, they're all gone. He converted those over to the digital platform. So definitely fasting does stimulate autophagy. There's benefits for some people for losing weight, but both of us don't think you should focus on fasting for weight loss. But
Actually, if you're obese, I would highly recommend fasting for fat
there you
loss.
go. That's from the NTP.
Yeah.
She's dropping some knowledge.
Yeah.
The reality of fasting and its benefits, which I think Amy's going to get to now, are somewhat dependent on the reality of what you're doing. So just by restricting yourself for 12 hours doesn't mean that you're going to have autophagy. And that's something that I think people need to understand. It may be beneficial to you in your lifestyle. It may, coerce you into eating less calories and somehow you lose weight or something like that. But it doesn't mean that any type of restriction leads to autophagy. There's levels of autophagy. There's, as we talked about, right? There's some levels of building, levels of restriction, but you need to focus on what you think is good for you. Now, for Amy and I, what we talk about all the time is longevity, and that's where my focus is too. So I just wanted to say that before you start talking, because I think that could be very apropos.
Yeah. Yeah. So your reason for fasting is very key. And obviously, like I said, your body is always breaking stuff down and rebuilding regardless. There's other triggers for this too. That's why I went through the list of things that like inside your body are showing you that you're in a fasted state, because for some people it might take longer to get into like a truly fasted state, depending on your energy stores, like what your last meal was. If you had a super carbohydrate dense meal, like it might take you more than 18 hours to get into a truly fasted state. Whereas for other people, if you had a super light meal, really quick digesting, like you might be into that fasting state closer to 12 hours. So I do highly recommend for just all humans that you try as much as possible to have 12 hours a day where you're not eating, just for general health. I'm not a fan of intermittent fasting for a lot of reasons for the general population. The biggest one that I think
I refer to as gym pop.
Yeah. One big thing, and that I would caution people, if you're interested in intermittent fasting, like definitely do it for a reason and do it with some intention, because what ends up happening with a lot of people is that they have a really short feeding window. They're starving, so they just eat a lot. So their goal in doing this.
And they're not even thinking about their choices.
Correct.
Right? Like you're almost hurting yourself more.
Right. Your macronutrient breakdown still matters. Total calories still matter. Even if you're an OMAD or a warrior, like eating one gigantic meal a day, if that meal has more calories than your body can process, that's not going to be helpful or beneficial or healthful or anything else. So you're kind of torturing yourself for no reason.
And you may not be getting the autophagy that you think you're getting too.
Yep.
So you're compressing down to one meal a day. You're eating a crap load of crap. And then you're not even having the benefits of true autophagy because it's probably not long enough. And then there's workarounds with that. That's like, it gets into the, bulletproof and all that kind of stuff is, trying to trick the body into doing certain things like that, the supplements I take. But
that's what fasting mimicking does as well.
Okay. Yeah. So, sorry, interrupt.
No, it was good.
Yeah.
So the one thing I would very much highly caution anybody who is considering intermittent fasting, which would mean you're restricting your feeding window every single day, beyond like 14 to 16 hours is making sure that you're taking probably some digestive supplements with your first meal, because you can get biliary stasis really quickly.
God, you love that. And then was that the HCl stuff?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, and ox bile. I'd actually recommend like ox bile and
I
other
hate the
things.
fact that I know all this stuff now.
Because it's sitting on my desk.
Because you filled my head with like,
But biliary stasis, you're
no, it's for reals.
Yeah, you get gallstones, and like you don't need to have your gallbladder removed for no reason.
I was listening to a podcast. I don't remember which one it was, but he had a functional doctor on there. It probably was Dave Asprey's. And he was talking about getting the bile flow. And it's like a big thing in functional medicine.
It's a huge thing in nutritional
Eastern,
therapy
and
practitioner.
Eastern medicine is like you're really focusing on really getting that bile to flow.
Yeah. So apple cider vinegar is something that I would
You
recommend.
talked about apple cider vinegar. You know what you're talking about.
Oh my gosh, it's almost like I do this for a living.
That's crazy. He talked about that.
Yeah. So those things that stimulate bile, stimulate digestive enzymes to start
Yeah, they were
working
talking
again.
about astringents and things like that.
Yeah. Are very important if you're taking on longer duration fasting on a daily basis, especially because you could really be putting a lot of unnecessary stress on your gallbladder, and even your liver at some point is getting some, stasis. Things are just not moving as well, right? Because they don't need to. But biliary stasis specifically, like having your gallbladder removed because you were trying to, 9/7 your life, or 19/7, like you were trying to fast for a really long period of time, not worth it. Like you need your gallbladder. It's not.
Yeah, you don't need.
You need it. Yeah.
You don't need your gallbladder. You can live. There's a lot of people that live without their gallbladder.
There are, but they have to, you have to take supplements for life.
Functional
and-
medicine people.
Yeah.
These
Can't break down
surgeons. You
fat.
take it out and you're still alive, then you're cured.
Right, you're fine. You don't need that appendix either. Let's get rid of your tonsils.
Are you
while we're at
alive,
it.
lady? Yes. Good.
All right.
Winning.
Yeah. We're going to take out 10 feet of your intestines too. Okay. So back to this. So I recently completed, and by recently, I mean literally just 3 days ago, finished a fasting mimicking protocol.
Which I asked Amy about it because I'm going to do it too, and she would not tell me. She was saving it for the podcast.
Well, so you asked me yesterday. You missed your chance, man.
Oh, no.
I was so ready to tell you on Monday, but you didn't want to talk about it. So fasting mimicking is actually a 5-day protocol. It has been double-blind studied in humans. This is actually has like $48 million of research behind it. The doctor who developed this protocol has done it in concert with many other amazing physicians. It has been studied in humans extensively. So it basically is a way to fast for an extended period of time, but never trigger your nutrient sensing pathways, specifically mTOR, IGF-1, and PKA. PKA is sugar sensing. So all the things that tell your body, hey, I'm getting food, it makes sure that it never triggers any of those by very specific allotments of nutrition or food throughout this 5 days. But I will tell you this, if there is any doubt that like you're in a fasted state on this, like if you monitor things like your HRV and your resting heart rate, you will be shocked. My HRV was at 99 or 100, which I didn't even know it could like
go that high.
Right. The whole time, my body temperature every night was dropping lower and lower
That's
and
crazy.
lower.
Crazy.
As my HRV was going up and up and up, and my respiratory rate was going down all these
What about
days.
your base heart rate?
That's my daily heart rate was also very low, like
Lower?
at least 10 beats per minute lower than my normal, like because it'll tell you on your Aura app. Shout out to
Which
Aura.
we got the new rings, by the way.
They don't want to sponsor us. They'd
That's
rather
okay.
have Kim
That's
Kardashian.
right. They have Kim Kardashian. They got Kim Kardashian.
Yeah, she doesn't know what I know.
I was like, is there anything that's so I mean,
I know that did
God
upset
bless
me.
Kim Kardashian. I'm not mad at her, but like she is not like a biohacker. I mean, that's not who she is.
No. But she's a famous person,
That's
so
okay.
she's got that going for her.
Okay.
So the Aura ring with the new update, the Aura 3 will give you your lowest average heart rate throughout the day as well.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, so that also went down. I mean, it was pretty amazing. My final day of the fast, my resting heart rate was 42.
Yeah.
My average heart rate that night was 44.
That's nuts.
Yeah, so it's not even like at night, they'll always tell you your lowest, and my lowest, is usually in the upper 40s. But
Yeah,
my
so
average,
my lowest is usually low 50s.
And then what's your average?
My average during the day, I think, is
No,
like,
at night.
the average over the lowest is usually low 50s, and the average is like 52 or 53. It stays pretty consistent. Yeah.
See, mine will sometimes, depending on the time of month, because I am a woman,
You
as
are?
we've talked about
So
before.
You're a woman?
My lowest.
Why didn't you tell me this when I hired you? I don't understand.
I thought you might eventually pick up on it, but it's been too subtle.
Oh, yeah.
My lowest might be like, let's say, 47, but my average might be 52.
Oh, that's a big difference. Yeah.
Like 5 beats,
Yeah.
So if you look at the chart throughout the night, like you'll see these big, especially if I'm having like, I mean, there you can see like literally if you've had like a bad dream, like there will be this massive
Right.
spike. If you have to go to the bathroom, like all those things are going to elevate your heart rate, and so that's going to affect your average. But on the 5-day fasting protocol, it was low and like almost like flat at night. Like,
How was your sleep? How was your sleep on it?
The first couple of nights, my sleep was amazing, but then one of the side effects of fasting is feeling cold. And I will tell you, it was not like feeling cold. It was like feeling like I was gonna like freeze to death. Like I was like bundled up in blankets, keeping my house like 5 degrees warmer than normal, and still being like so cold you couldn't even believe it. And like, so there were a couple of times I woke up because I was cold. And then it's hard to fall asleep when you're cold. It's like camping, like that feeling you have when you're camping where you're like, oh, if I could just fall asleep, but I'm so freezing. So that happened like one night. The rest of the nights, it was great. My sleep was awesome. Like I literally feel like there was one night where I like woke up in the exact same position I fell asleep in like 8 hours later.
It's so interesting because like, so HRV improved.
Yes, like immensely.
Your base heart rate improved or went down, so which is, you would think is an improvement. Your core temperature went down, which is usually a good sign. So for example, if you have these rings, and the other night I went out, I talked about this earlier about the wine tasting thing, and so with this wine tasting thing, I thought it was gonna be sips of wine. It was like glasses of wine, and Amy and I aren't drinkers. And then it was like this kind of heavy meal that was kind of fattening meals, small dishes. My base heart rate went from normally around 50 to 65 overnight. my core temperature went up like a full degree.
It's because your body you were thermogenic. You were burning through all of that.
I was burning through everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so clear that I had a bolus of alcohol and fat, and the ring doesn't lie. I mean, it's not perfect, but it really gives you a good idea. So the fact that you had this experience on the fast is pretty remarkable. I mean, it's really good evidence this thing works.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. So, there's a lot of research behind this. This Dr. Longo, Walter Longo, also wrote a book. And I read the book and I was like, oh, this is great. Like, I'm going to just be able to learn what to do. And you read through this entire book and you think, oh, the next chapter is going to be where he tells me the magic, the next chapter. And basically at the end of that, it's, you absolutely should not try this on your own because it would just be way too hard to replicate this. And after doing it, I understand that. Like there is
really though,
literally no way.
I mean, I'm going to do, by the way, I'm going to do this
not.
Fast, and we're going to be pro.
I'm going to show it too.
Yeah, we're going to show it.
There is no possible way that even I would be able to, as just one person, who knows a lot about it's not the ingredients, it's about the absolute preciseness of everything. I mean, down to the gram. Because here's the thing with fasting, like if you're either doing it or you're not.
Yeah, but everyone's different. Everyone has different weights and different physiology.
It brings that into account. But my point is with this, why would I do this and like roll the dice? Like, I hope I'm doing this right.
Well, that's what everyone does.
Right. I mean, I did weigh my nuts, but maybe my scale's off, like, so even just a little too much is going to trigger, even if you have too much caffeine. The precursor to PKA, which is the sugar sensing, tells your body you've had sugar. Ooh, is something, acronym that is the caffeine cycle. So if you have a lot of caffeine, it can actually kick you out of fasting or out of autophagy. Yeah. So the bulletproof coffees get great. If you're doing a bulletproof fast, which is fine, you might be able to stay in that fasted state drinking bulletproof coffee, but you might not. So that's where testing becomes much more of a big deal. So if you're, for this short duration for 5 days, I would not recommend anybody try to do it themselves. Like either do a water fast or do this for extended duration. I actually think, and this is like my, big brain on, day 2 after my 5-day fast, I was like, ooh, I think when I do it next month, I'm going to do 3 days of it. And then I'm just going to do 2 days of water fasting. And I say that now. Trust me. I will tell you my experience on day 5. Well, let me show it first. So it's actually really cool. So, and the pricing is extremely reasonable. You can buy this not from a doctor's office, but I would still caution you to make sure you've checked with your doctor to make sure you're healthy enough for a 5-day fast before you start, or just get it through a doctor's office or a nutritional therapy.
Are we doing it through our office?
We are.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, why don't you tell them to do it through our office?
That's what I mean,
be like that doctor who wrote the book.
Right.
This is an amazing fast, but you got to buy it directly from me. There you go.
Right. Or just don't do anything. So it's called Prolong. It comes in this big, and this is my one. I really wish this did not come in such a gigantic box because it's all full of disposables. I mean, yes, this is cardboard. It's recyclable. But by the end, I kind of just felt like I had a lot of trash. I hadn't done
spelled PROLON.
I hadn't done any dishes, which was great. So every day comes in its own little box. I grabbed the day 2 box because it has the drink in it.
There you go.
So each box comes with everything you need for the day, including your supplements. So there are supplements included in it. There's a multivitamin and also an alga, which is just a plant-based omega. So it comes with your teas. These bars are so delicious. The L bar. So it comes
So how
with
do you
that.
have an extra one, or is this mine?
This is yours. Yeah.
Don't eat mine.
I'm not
Don't mess mine
I'm
up.
not
Don't
gonna eat
mess
yours.
my box up.
Well, you're going to see it now too.
Okay.
I will not mess your box up. Oh my
Did
gosh.
you cut a hole in that box?
The days it slides right out. Stop it. The days you get this little Choco Crisp are really good. I think there's 3 days where you get that. The olives. Oh my gosh, the olives. So delicious. And then there's this one. That day 2, you get 2 olives and no crackers, which was a sad day. And the soups. So the soups are actually really delicious too. You just mix these with water. I mean, this is still, it's very minimal calories. And again, they've been precisely tested and monitored. And again, in humans to make sure that you are not kicked out of a fasting
So this
state.
is, data-driven
100%.
fasting protocol for 5
Yep.
days, fasting mimicking kind of diet.
Fasting making protocol,
Yeah.
yeah. So you get a bunch of tea, like the teas are good. At the end of it, I had a ton of the spearmint tea left because I'm not a huge mint tea fan.
I
and
love
then
mint tea.
this is how you adjust for different sized people, right? Because not everybody's the same size. So what do? How do you adjust it to that person? It comes with what they call the L drink, which tastes like it's like the LaCroix of Gatorade. Like there's a hint of a smell, but there's really no taste. So this is just glycerin.
So it's the opposite of cod oil.
It is the opposite of cod liver oil if you watched our previous episode. So glycerin, when you're in a fed state, will be kind of just excreted. You won't use it at all. So like they'll use it as an artificial sweetener in a lot of things. You'll see glycerin on ingredient lists. And it's non-nutritional. Like it's non-nutritive, It's non-nutritive. So your body won't use it. So when you have other sources of nutrition, your body just excretes it. But what they found through, again, actual scientific data in humans is that if you drink this glycerin water while you're fasting, it'll actually help preserve lean muscle mass. So you won't break down as much muscle tissue because your body kind of sees this as fuel, but it doesn't trigger mTOR, IGF-1, or PKA.
Now, do you play that song Glycerine?
I do. I
When
did
you're
think about
drinking
that.
it.
Bush. Yep.
Yeah.
Shout out to Bush. Shout out to Gavin Rosdale. So
That's your guy, though. You love
Oh,
Gavin.
yeah,
Ross.
I do.
If you're watching, Gavin.
Yeah. I saw you in Denver,
Yeah. Saw you. Hearts.
right? Like,
You should just take your glycerin to glycerine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so there's actually on the side, if you look, and I will tell you this, like there was a day, I think maybe day 3, I was like, or day 4, I like just knew exactly how much to pour into my bottle. I looked, I was right on the line. I'm like, that's right. So
Yeah,
see, the mental
slam it.
acuity gets there. So you just go based on weight and you just pour it into your bottle and you mix it with water and drink it throughout the day. And that's what makes sure you preserve lean muscle mass. On this fast specifically, that's a big deal, right? You want to make sure you're fasting for 5 days is a long time. Your body would love to just start breaking down muscle, but this encourages it to preserve muscle and break down fat instead. So yeah. What questions do you have for me about the fast? Because this is what I didn't want you to ask me yesterday because I want to save the questions for
All
today.
right. So how did you feel, number one?
So I felt really good, surprisingly good.
Wait, but by the way, while you're talking, put all my stuff back in
Well,
my
I don't want to
box.
make a lot of noise.
Okay, sorry.
I feel like I've made enough
But don't
noise
mess
for
it up,
Nils.
'cause-
I won't. That's why I'm just leaving it right here. I'm leaving it right here. So I felt really good on day 1. I actually have some notes. Day 1, actually, that's not true. Day 1 was the only day that I felt kind of out of sorts. I had a mild headache. I had kind of a stomach ache all day. But overall, I wrote that I did not feel like I was fasting or hungry at all day. I was really cold before going to bed, but slept well, is what I
Okay.
wrote. The real cold didn't hit until like day 2, but it was snowing and freezing that day. So I'm like, well, that's probably why. Oh no, the freezing feeling didn't really leave me until like yesterday. And I mean, unbelievably cold. like you've been camping in the winter and you're like chilled to the bone cold. So I actually, you're not supposed to lift weights during this because, right, you don't want to turn on mTOR. You don't want to turn on those signals to build for your muscles when you've depleted them of food. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So I just did cardio, just light cardio. I mean, like really light cardio. But for me, because that's my routine, I felt a lot better when I did that. The first day I didn't. And I think that's why I felt kind of like out of it, didn't feel super great. By the end, so this is my funny story. So day 5, I had all my boxes from the previous
Did you
days.
feel really hungry on day 5? I mean, that's what everybody wants to know. That's the first question
I
they're going to
didn't.
ask. You're like skipping over it, talking about cardio.
No, I didn't. I
Like the
never
worst
felt.
storyteller ever.
Oh, sorry. I was just trying to tell you about my experience.
No, I mean,
Yeah, day 2, good clinic, not hungry, good energy, olives and remaining bar.
okay.
I'm really cold, but it's a cold day. Oh, I had my blood drawn on day 3. So not only was I fasted, but then I had like 6 vials of blood drawn and I still felt fine. Like I didn't feel lightheaded. I felt great. I was freezing today is what I wrote. Not hungry, but felt a lot of boredom hunger being at home most of the day.
So
'Cause-
really, that's interesting. So you really didn't have a lot of hunger.
No, I had none, but I did have, and this is what you realize when you do this, is that so much of our feeding as humans is social, but also habit. You know, like when I do this, I eat this, or like after I do this, I eat this, or when I come home, I eat dinner with my family. Like there are a lot of like emotional triggers to eat that have nothing to do with hunger. And I think we all know that, but until you literally strip them all away, you don't realize how much of eating is almost unconscious. Like where you're like, oh, it's just time to eat. Or I think I feel like having something crunchy right now. Like that has nothing to do with you being hungry. It has with the desire in your mind to like fill that emotional need, or like, oh, that was stressful. Like maybe I'll have some sugar, you know, and that's.
I mean, that's what you're describing, what everyone struggles with weight and eating.
Well, that's what I mean. Like the way we eat is tied to our emotions.
Yeah.
So did I ever feel hungry? Like, oh my gosh, I am actually hungry? No. Was I always very excited to like, you know, nibble on 6 olives? Yes. Day 5, I wrote almost done. Day 4, my HRV was 100. I was super excited. Bought a puzzle to help fill home time. And I did that puzzle in like 2 hours. It was great. And then I gave it to Catherine because it was a really fun puzzle. So I mean, I guess I still had the mental acuity to do a puzzle. I don't know if my mental acuity was feeling stronger. The one thing I did notice on day 5 was even just very light cardio at the gym made my muscles feel very crampy, like really crampy, like almost instantly. So I made sure I had a lot of my glycerin water with me at the gym so that I wasn't depleting muscle, because I didn't want to do that. I was not pushing it hard. I was not exercising. I was just doing some very light movement. But also on day 5, I had all the boxes from the previous day sitting there, and like the one I kept all the wrappers because I'm OCD. I don't know. I just wanted, it was reassuring to like see it all happening, you know, like, yes, I've done this and put this back in the box. There was a tiny little piece of a nut in the wrapper that was like stuck on the edge where it's a little bit sticky at the top. And I was doing something else, and like out of the corner of my eye, I saw that. And I'm not kidding. Like I was like a wild animal in the woods. Like it was like this like overriding instinct of like, oh my God, there's food.
Was it a Brazilian nut?
It might have been just one.
Okay.
Yeah. But that feel like it was crazy to kind of feel that like very like animal instinct of like, that's food. And like, I'm not kidding. This was the tiniest piece of something. You would have flicked this into the sink. It was a crumb. But like to my fasted mind, not only did I see it,
okay,
but I was like, I had to eat it.
Right. So you didn't, besides your incessant talking about feeling cold.
I was freezing.
Yeah. You really weren't like super hungry the whole time. What did it feel like after you broke the fast?
Well, that's where it got bad. The fast was great. I had that mild headache.
So Prolon, you're pro Prolon.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would not attempt this without it. I would just do a straight fast for as long as I could.
Right. So you think you should do Prolon with doctor's assistance, correct?
I think you should at least do it with someone's assistance,
Yeah.
you know, who make sure, with someone's assistance. Okay. So coming off the fast, they have a little protocol of recommended things to do on day 6. And then they say on day 7, just go back to your normal diet. That was not my experience at all. I felt far worse the first 2 days off the fast. This is day 3 off the fast. The first day off the fast was miserable. Like I felt terrible. I had, it was not good. I actually lost a full pound on day 6. We'll call it day 6 because of how much intestinal distress I had. I mean, it was really rough. Did not feel good. Back to the gym because people are going to ask. So I'm like, okay, I'll just go do like a lightweight workout. I am not kidding. Lifting even the lightest weight that I would even warm up with felt like the last set of a drop set, the first rep. Like it was like my muscles were like burning with fatigue. Like that feeling of like I've done like so many reps and now I'm just repping it out from the very first rep. Like the muscles just felt like, I don't know, like that's the only way to describe it.
It's crazy.
Like it wasn't like they were weak. It was like they were like, there was nothing, they had nothing to give. You know, so I did a really light workout. And even today I got back to almost where I'd normally be lifting, but not quite. So I think that I underestimated how long it was going to take me to come out of the fast because of how deep the fast goes. And I think people see this and they're like, oh, well, you were eating, like you weren't fasting. I'm like, trust me, like your body thinks you are completely devoid of signaling nutrients. So you are in a very fasted state. So I would definitely recommend having a good plan for coming out of the fast and knowing that you might take a couple of days. I mean, today is day 3. I finally feel like pretty good. You know, I still would say I feel like not quite ready to eat a normal human amount of food, you know, but I feel pretty good. And that's my experience. You know, they say in their studies, with the human studies, they told people to do nothing different. Like they gave them no advice at all. Like literally, like here you go, 5 days done. Like bye. Like see you next month.
And everyone had different experiences afterwards.
I'm sure, but they said no one had any negative experiences. Mm-hmm. You know, so I think a lot of people maybe come out of this just fine. Yeah, I had a rough time coming out of the fast. I was like, this was a mistake.
It's so interesting.
Coming out.
I'm excited about doing it.
Yeah. So I'm going to do the recommended protocol with this company is to do, and what they studied in humans. And I know I keep saying that, but it's so rare we get human data. They actually did 3 in a row. So you do 1 every 25 days to get kind of the biggest benefit. And then they actually tested people again 3 months after they'd finished their last one and found that they'd retained about 60% of the benefits. So all the decreases in blood pressure, fasting glucose, all of those things were still down. IGF-1 was still down. Body weight in the people who needed to lose weight was still down. So it's really cool. They actually right now are actually undergoing studies for dementia with humans and also for IBS or gut issues. And they're actually measuring they're taking the DNA, the gut DNA from all of these participants now and analyzing that. They also, that was one thing I didn't mention, they took blood stem cells because your stem cells go up in your blood when you're fasting. So they did take that. Like they measured all of these things. Like they have so much data. And even the Dr. Longo said that like at some point, like they have so much data, like they're going to need AI help to even analyze it because no one's ever done anything this extensive in humans before as far as fasting goes.
So interesting.
Yeah.
I'm super excited about doing it.
Any questions? Questions from the audience? Nils, do you have any questions?
Nils, you got any questions?
About my 5-day fast? He's like, you just didn't stop talking for an hour?
No, I just love after the bad experience, Jason said, I'm excited to try.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Oh, I'm absolutely doing it again. I mean, with women, that is one thing. They don't have any specific data about when you should do it in your cycle if you're a menstruating woman, but they recommend perhaps doing the luteal phase, which is what I did. And that's what I'm going to do for the next 2 months also.
I'm doing mine in the luteal phase too.
You have a luteal phase?
Yeah.
It's from all that time spent with me and all my estrogen.
It is because all my patients are women and mostly, and then you. So I feel like I do have a luteal phase.
Nils here. He's like straight testosterone. Like Nils is
I
testosterone.
only get Nils like once every couple of weeks. So.
You gotta start rubbing up against him. So
that was really cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
So you're pro fasting. Mm-hmm. The fasting mimicking protocol from Prolon, you're a big fan of.
Definitely makes it easier to fast.
Which apparently we're going to bring to our office. So if you're interested in that, you should call Amy up or email her. How would they get a hold of you, Amy?
Just email me, amy@jasonmartinmd.
Right. So I'm going to be doing it, and I will report back, and maybe we'll throw that on social media.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how your experience is and if it's any different than mine. I will say this: if you're thinking about doing it, I felt great the whole time I was on it. In fact, day 2 through 5, I felt really good. I would not plan. They say a lot of people like to do it Monday through Friday. I would absolutely not recommend that. Because feeling the last 2 days, if I'd felt that way on the weekend, I would not have loved it. Whereas my weekend was fine because I was fasting. I would do it kind of like I did, where you start midweek and then end early in the week. So you have a few days to recover. And then by the weekend, you feel like a normal person again.
Right. It is important to note that both Amy and I are teetotalers, so we don't really drink that much alcohol. I think that's going to be hard for some people. Yeah. The caffeine's what's going to kill me.
And you can have one 8-ounce cup a day or 2 cups of green tea.
Oh, okay.
So you can have a little, but you still want to have a lot because
how much is an 8-ounce cup? Is it like
about half of that?
Is it like this whole thing right here?
That's about 2.
It's like a can of Coke, right? Not 8 ounces.
Those are 16.
That's good enough.
Or 12. They're 12. Coke cans are 12.
I don't mind drinking dark coffee, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yep. Yeah, but you can have black coffee. And I had green tea every day just for the health benefits of green tea.
Yeah.
And it's low caffeine. I just had 1 cup a day, but there's such minimal caffeine in
I
green
love
tea.
It. Good.
Yeah. So I thought it was great. I really appreciate everybody listening. I know this is kind of a really long, deep podcast, but I really do believe in the benefits of fasting. I think that as a society, we've become extremely overfed. And evolutionarily, that is not the way our lives were. Regardless of your status in life, like for the very few was food a given on a daily basis. And there was certainly not refined sugar or industrial seed oils.
Yeah, to that point, I've spent the past 4 or 5 years overfeeding to put mass on and muscle. And now I'm looking forward to getting to a stage in my life where I can really focus on periods of restriction. So I do think that there's benefits of both ways, but I'm really looking forward to this, to be honest with you.
Well, and for most people, this is a 1 to 2 time a year thing. This is not.
Yeah, I'm saying even if you're building the whole time, but at least you're cleaning a house a couple times a year. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. We all should be doing that. That's what I'm saying.
That's what I mean too. Like we kind of need to get back to that. And historically, religion was a big reason that people fasted, but when there was a surplus of food, but now it is a choice, and I think this is a good choice. I do think I will work up to doing a couple of days of water fasting. I've done a 36-hour water fast before, and it was fine. But yeah, I think I could go 3 days.
Oh, man.
I think so.
I ain't doing that.
Yeah.
Can I do 3 days with coffee?
Well, yeah. I mean, you can have coffee.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. But just 1 cup. All right. Well, again, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. If you found this episode helpful, it really helps us out if you leave us a positive comment, rating, or review on wherever you're listening to this podcast, specifically on the Apple podcast. That's where Google loves listening to that. That is our social media information. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, we can do that at our phone number, 303-630-9038. We love listening to your questions and comments, all that good stuff.
We like your VMs. We like your DMs. We like it all.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you hear us next time. Was that my eloquent way of leaving the last episode?
Yeah, and the next time you see me, I may be a lot skinnier from my 5-day fast.
Maybe.
Joking.
All right. Bye, everyone.
I'm going to get in trouble for that comment.
Don't forget to check out our sponsor, Let's Get Checked. Let's Get Checked offers fast, affordable, and completely confidential health testing for everything from STDs, male and female hormones, and even COVID-19, right from the comfort of your own home. And remember, new customers and listeners of our podcast get 20% off by using our URL, trylgc.com/beauty, and be sure to use the code BEAUTY20 at checkout. That's trylgc.com/beauty and use the code BEAUTY20, beauty, BEATUY 20 at checkout. Get checked. It's the right thing to do.